It's about beauty, it's about death, it's about narcissism, and there's even there might be even a trace of nice people in this thing too. Where was the sort of starting point for you, Nick? Where was the beginning point on this film for you?
I
wanted to be a trick question.
I wanted to make a horror film about beauty, and I basically woke up one morning and I was like, 2 years ago, feeling down, and I was like, I wasn't born beautiful, but my wife is, and I wondered what it would be like. So I came up with this idea to do a film about beauty, but at the same time I see my children who are now starting to be teenagers also going into a world where beauty is has much stronger control of our society. So I felt that I wanted to do it as a teenage horror film. It was also a way to live out their inner 16-year-old girl that every man has inside of him. And the ones who say no are lying. So that was kind of the starting point.
I don't want to sit though.
And I had the beginning in the film, and then I knew that it needed her to devour. So I had structure, and then started from there.
At least you had an ending, yeah. And how did you two, why don't you tell the story, how did you two meet, and what were the circumstances, what did he tell you about the film before you even read the script?
Well, I obviously knew Nick and his work, and I was in South Africa, and they only had like 2 channels, and one was Afrikaans, so I couldn't understand it, and then the other one, it was a movie channel, and they only played Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Drive, and those were the only 2. So they said, all right, Drive's on again tonight. All right, great. So I've seen that movie a lot. And then when I got back from that film, and I heard that Nick was doing a movie about the fashion world, and that the lead would be a teenage girl, which was very surprising to me, knowing Nick's previous films. And yeah, I didn't know the script or anything, but even not knowing the story, I wanted to be a part of it right away, because it just, it's cool. And then he wanted to meet with me, and I went to his house in LA, and walked in. There's like princess clothes everywhere, and I'm like, because then I realized it's 2 young girls and his wife, so he's surrounded by this feminine energy. And he explained, first thing you explained was the opening scene of me, or a vision that he had of what he wanted to look like, of this girl who, is it a crime scene? She's beautiful, but there's blood, and inside this death and beauty, and everyone's obsession with beauty that we have in the world. And yeah, then I read the script, and it was just like a friendship was made.
At what point did you realize the princess clothes were actually his and not his daughter's?
Right.
Yeah. Dressing the 16-year-old girl inside of him.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm not saying there is. This is a very different film than you've done before. And not to say you actually are really great at not repeating yourself. Both of you are, but you in particular are really great at that and always have been. And I'm wondering, when you kind of figured out just how dark and how deep this film was getting, did it feel like a step toward a certain kind of older, perhaps, mature, darker works?
Maybe. I mean, I didn't really think about that when you're choosing. I wasn't like, oh, this is going to be dark, But I was 16 at the time, and I turned 17 while filming. I feel like a lot of like milestones along the way have happened while this film is now coming out. I turned 18. I graduated like a couple days ago, and
High school, graduated.
Yeah. So it's funny because all these things are happening. So I do feel older in a way. So I think it's perfect for the movie to come out now. when I'm 18, and yeah, well, when we were filming it, we filmed in chronological order, and so we kind of I think we made Jessie even darker than she was in the script.
And you told me earlier that, and maybe you could talk about this, that it was a truly collaborative process in that you would come to work some days and just say, what do you want to do today? Like you knew the story, but at the same time you were very free-form and very loose about how it was shot. Is that how you always work, or was this particularly loose and improvisational in a way?
Well, I love to collaborate in the sense of wanting to become a mutation between myself and the lead actor, or this time actress. You know, that one of the reasons I shoot in chronological order is that there's a constant change. Things will obviously become different, and you need to go on that journey together. So it's about the intimacy and the trust that you build. And on this movie, you know, when Elle came over, and there was really no one else to play the role, there was only her, so the agenda was to get Elle Fanning. And so when she came, I said, you know, it's important that we become one person, that you know, I'm not a 16-year-old girl, I'm a 44-year-old man, but I would love to live through you in this film. So you have to live through me, and we have to find that child, or that baby, whatever we're going to be making, we're going to make it together. And I think, you know, that it becomes much more of a singular journey between us. And because if you don't, it's going to end disastrous, because it's going to go in all different directions, and it's important that we find something between us. So I always very much enjoy that kind of process, and you know, I had done it with Brian twice, and you know, with Elle it was like an obvious approach, and being mature, professional, brilliant, having the it actress, she happily agreed to the challenge.
There's a scene early on, it's the scene where you're with the moon and you and the young photographer, not boyfriend, where you basically lay out your life to him, and you say, I'm not good at any of these things, but I'm pretty. And that like almost, it struck me, because you never hear anybody say that. There's almost a stigma attached to someone saying they think they're good looking. For both of you, why do you think that is? And obviously in the modeling world, maybe not as much, but it seemed like something that was like the most confident thing she says in the whole movie almost, it's like that one thing.
Well, one of the, when I first met Elle again, she came over and saw the princess clothes. After she had come over the shock of all the things around, I asked her, do you think you're beautiful?
And how did you respond?
It's so uncomfortable. I mean, which is how I reacted that way, but then I was like, yes, I said yes. And I think at that moment we realized what the movie was about, because we had talked about beauty and the myth of Narcissus, and in our conversation, then he asked me that question. I was like, oh, I'm comfortable, and I said yes. I think that with my generation of with social media and things, we are constantly looking at photos of ourselves, which is either, is it healthy or is it unhealthy? Because I think that we also are very comfortable with ourselves in that way, and comfortable with narcissism, which is the horrifying part of it. But we're constantly looking at these pictures, which are dead images. So it's like, it's death and beauty combined in a way. And so when we see a real life person, it's kind of shocking. And it's not a pixelated, that's not a photograph. Because that is turning into what beauty is.
Part of the movie was also that the idea of making a story that celebrates narcissism as a virtue. Because in a way, it's the exact opposite of how we usually relate to narcissism. It's a taboo. It's something negative, but I can see that Elle's generation, there's a much more advanced understanding of individualism that is starting to happen. And I think that in the near future, the digital revolution will no longer become a revolution, but just a simple reality, and it will mutate together with the physical figure, normality, and you will get some kind of new idea of your mind.
I'm going to ask one more question. I'm going to throw it to you guys. Can you talk a little bit about some of the? I mean, this is a beautifully artistic horror film, and it reminded me a great deal of what the Italians used to do in the 70s and early 80s. We talked about Argento earlier, but were those big influences on you as you were in your formative years? And talk about sort of that aspect of turning a horror film into something more than just a series of scares.
Well, I mean, the Italians, I mean, I love Italian cinema, and especially the Italian horrors of that period, of the high point, because they were always a little more insane, they were a little more extreme, they were a little more existentialistic, they were a little more of everything. And like I always say, you know, Suspiria is the greatest cocaine movie ever made, because it literally feels like you ran out of cocaine, you don't know what to do. But I love the absurdity of but it's an Italian tradition of their art. If you go back to the 17th century and look at their painters and their sculptures, there was always a sense of extremeness that was just, it was larger than life, and I was always gravitated towards that when I was younger, because at one level it was highly artistic, at the same time it was extremely grotesque, and I always, you know, find those things they're more provocative emotionally than anything else.
All right, who wants some vinyl?